Hey, 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 everyone, it's Isaya. Welcome, welcome. This is another one of my Inspiring Evenings podcast episodes, and it's one where I talk with someone. And I'm actually talking with the amazing Nicole Brûlé-Walker. Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Get used to Nicole because she's going to come several times into the podcast because we're doing a series called Exploring Core Truths. Yes, big thing. And this is episode one of the Exploring Core Truths Conversations with Nicole, a 5 episode series that is going to be, well, Nicole is mostly going to be discussing her core truth system, which is a pioneering framework that bridges neuroscience, somatic intelligence, and conscious leadership. As you know, my podcast episode, most of the conversations happen live and are there shared just the way they are in my podcast and anywhere else the guest feels like sharing. So before we go into talking about the core truth system, I want to present Nicole, and the best way I have is to read her biography. Nicole Brûlé-Walker is the founder of the Core Truth System, which is a pioneering framework that bridges neuroscience, somatic intelligence, and conscious leadership, as I said previously. Drawing on over 25 years of experience working with elite athletes, entrepreneurs, and impact-driven founders, Nicole guides individuals and organizations to rewire limiting patterns and unlock sustainable performance from the inside out. Her approach uses intentional neuroplasticity, which translates complex science into deeply human transformation. Through core truths, and you've guessed it, there are 5 of them, she helps clients move beyond stress management and mindset work to recalibrate the perceptual architecture that shapes their decisions, relationships, and well-being. A strategist, mentor, and speaker, Nicole is known for her clarity, compassion, and ability to reveal the blind spots between body and mind. Her work invites people to move from reaction to conscious creation by restoring coherence, authenticity, and purpose in how they lead and live. The title for this episode is Seeing Through the Filter: Women, Reality, and the Stories We Inherit. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
That's impressive. It's an impressive bio. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of big words there, but we're going to get through that. So, before we go into truth number one, because this is episode number one, um, how did you end up, or how did this framework appear in your life or in your business?
Ooh, it was a real evolution over the time. I mean, I
Mm,
started off working mainly physically in the body, which is where the athlete side of things came from. And
hmm
so I was
hmm
working pitch side with athletes and looking at injuries, and really became fascinated about the different timeframes it took for somebody to heal, and that it could be very different even though you were
mm,
physically looking at the same problem. So it started me digging a little bit deeper, and I was really interested in sort of philosophy and psychologies and looking at breath work and energy work and all the different ways that we can merge body and mind. And it really became a fusion of all those things, but it was born out of personal experience, really. It was a process that I kind of took myself through, because I found that I was really restricting the way I was putting myself out there in the world as my own person in my own business,
hmm
and I could really see how that was impacting on me. And I just started to sort of kind of dissect the different areas, and I thought, gosh,
hmm
these are things that are really universal. Almost
hmm
anybody at any stage would have these problems, and so what can we do about it? And set about kind of putting it into some kind of structure, which I'd done with individual clients for a long time before it ever became the core
hmm
truths.
So it's called the core truth system, right?
Mm.
And there are, we guessed it, 5 of them. So today we're talking about the first one, which you call reality is filtered, not revealed. Am I correct?
Mm. Yes,
I
yes.
love that. I love that. It feels like a mystery. I feel like we're uncovering some truth here. What do you mean by that? Please develop,
Ooh,
explain, tell me
yes.
everything. Tell me
Absolutely,
the truth.
absolutely. We think that our truth and our reality and the things that we live through is what happens to us. And from a neuroscience perspective, it isn't really, because our brain is constantly predicting based on patterns, and it's trying to sort of basically save energy. And so it's finding shortcuts to all these different avenues. And we get there by the previous experience that we might have had, the way we feel about ourselves, our environment, all the different things that influence how we think about certain ways of being. And so these shortcuts almost predetermine where we're going to end up in the decision we make in our mind about something before we even have a chance to think about it. And because these patterns get embedded in us, we don't even realize there's a difference between us and the real us. It's
Yeah.
the us we put out
So
there. And
it's like we're conforming to some patterns that we're not even aware exist.
mm, yeah, it becomes very much ingrained in us, and it feels like it's us and who we are, and our behaviors and our way of thinking really become wrapped up in this, and it becomes our identity. And so it can be really destabilizing in a way, because suddenly, to realize that you've been living under this certain way for such a long time, and to be free of it, it's so liberating. But at the same time, you're sort of there is a moment where you feel like the rug's been pulled out from underneath you,
Hmm.
and you're like, who am I and what am I doing, and why was I following this the whole time?
Hmm.
And it's caused me so many different ways that I could have felt better about myself.
Hmm. So we're kind of unaware that these things have been kind of piling up in our mind to
Mm,
create a reality that we then identify with as is the one and only reality available to me. Is that,
yeah.
could we maybe find an example to kind of make that clearer?
I think I guess for me, it would be I'm going to share something personal. And for me, a long time, one of the beliefs I had, and I kind of hate the word limited or the phrase limiting beliefs, because it's so overused.
Yeah.
Um, but it became a pattern with me, basically, that I felt not good enough. And there were so many ways I was pushing myself to try and be better and prove myself. And it just became really exhausting. And of course, when you go down that road, burnout is a huge thing.
Hmm.
Um, just having self-confidence is a huge thing. And when I went back to retracing sort of where that came from, inevitably, most of us have something that is rooted in our childhood. And when I went back, and it was actually through a conversation with my mother, and we were talking about my dad, he was very, well, I say was, he is very clever. And he was always able to pick up things and do them almost instantly with
Hmm.
very little kind of practice. And so he kind of felt like we should be the same, because that was his perception.
Hmm.
But I had a moment where I was 6 years old learning to ride a bike, and my dad was getting increasingly frustrated because I was finding it so difficult, and kind of stomped off into the house and said, why can't she understand this? Why can't she just do it? And that was the moment that really kind of I could pin it all back to, where I started sort of really
Hmm.
undermining my sense of self. And so that
So,
kind of perpetuated into business and into other areas of my life.
so it's like because one event happens in our lives that is, I don't like the word traumatic, but at least, meaningful enough that we
Mm,
get somebody say something to us or something happen to us at a young age, maybe. We
mm.
then start to believe that this is a definition of self.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
believe it without even knowing it. Is that what we're talking about?
exactly. Yeah. And I think we put meaning into the event.
Yeah.
And so
Mm.
because we place meaning on that, we shape everything around that because we've
Yeah.
given it meaning. So we're kind of fueling that
Mm.
thought, that pattern, that behavior.
Yeah. I can give an example as well, a personal one as well. So, because now I'm getting it a little more. So, when I was a child, I used to love drawing. I wanted colors and pencils and pens and paints all the time. Both my parents were architects, so very good at drawing, both of them. And my mother is now a fully professional painter artist. And one day I had to draw a horse for school. And horses are notoriously difficult to draw. And I was not good at, representation. And I went to ask my dad for some help, basically, help me out because you're the good one. And instead of helping me, he drew the horse on the actual page that I was supposed. So he did it instead of me. And that was the one day that I decided, okay, so I'm not an artist. I don't know how to draw, and it's a one and done thing. I was 8, 9, and I really remember deciding that this was not for me. And it took me
Mm.
50 years to get over that, basically, and decide that I could be an artist even without knowing how to draw. I didn't even think about going to drawing school or, to art school, or it was, okay, no, not for me. Somebody else will always be better and will do it. So yeah, is that one of your, does that work as an example of
Absolutely. Yeah,
ingrained?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And it's our perception of what happened at the time, but then
Yeah.
if we had more understanding of the context around why that happened, sometimes we can shift, not that there's blame in a case, but we can shift the narrative from being one against yourself to
Mm,
being more sort of neutral. And then when it's more neutral, it's easier to kind of let go of it basically,
yeah.
and
Mm,
not have that in yourself anymore. Um, and I think for women, it's really tricky because you find these filters build up because we have so many different roles, and you're a partner and a friend and a mother and a daughter and a sister, and the numerous sort of hats we have to have in life. And so one of the things that I found really helpful for me is sort of kind of coming back and sort of saying, I don't have to be this person in this role because that actually isn't who I am. And for whatever
hmm
reason, I'm deciding for myself that this is what somebody should look like. And so when we start having anything with should, I always question it now.
I know the
because
feeling.
because why should that be the only way?
hmm Yeah, I was thinking of another thing that happened, a little later in my life, but is because of the roles things. I was something like 15, and my little cousin, he was a baby, basically, was my aunt gave it to me, gave him, sorry, to me for babysitting for, a couple of hours or something. And at some point, she was in the house, but she needed to do something, and I was watching over the baby, and her glasses were on the table, and he reached for the glasses, and I kind of took the glasses away from him because he was going to break him, or there was a danger for him to break a pair of glasses, which is an expensive device, blah blah blah. um I didn't think too much of it, but in the instant I took the glasses away from the baby, guess what? He started crying. He was not
Mm.
happy taking away my toy. There comes my aunt rushing in, and she was so adamant and so furious, basically, that her son was crying. And she said to me, "You're never going to be a good mother anyway." I was 15. I think, I literally think that I had 2 kids just to prove her wrong.
Mm.
I love my kids to bits, but I'm not sure if I really look at it from a deep perspective that I wanted children.
Mm.
I just had to prove her wrong that no, I could be a good mother. Because being a bad mother in my family, in the Greek society where I come from, is equivalent to being a bad person, basically. Evil, not a
Wow.
good mother. So it's like, I hear you. It's even more than family. It's society that puts this role. If, for women, you said we're mothers. So many women don't want children, but they're, at least in my generation, most of us, we were not asked if. It was like, you have to, because otherwise, you should, because otherwise it proves you're not a good person.
Mm.
Um, does that uh, kind of dig into the idea of this is filtered?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many filters that we take on, and it can be, um, it can be things like when you're growing up, and through your teenage years where we're sort of still figuring out who we are, and we try
hmm
things on for a period of time, and it might be a style of dress or a particular music, or going deeper than that, a line of thinking around a certain subject. And so, that it's interesting now because you sort of see in this sort of cancel culture that we have, people
Mm.
who, when they start digging back through their social media or through comments that somebody might have made, and I understand, things aren't acceptable and that moves forward. But I sort of think there has to be a little bit of grace because I think we've all been there and done it where we've maybe not been completely ourselves, or we went along with a way of thinking or a way of being that really wasn't us, but we were still figuring things out. And to kind of cancel somebody out when there's a one-off thing, it
Hmm.
seems really harsh to me, and that may not sit well with people. But I know there's a right and wrong, but things have altered over generations, and what is
Yeah.
acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah, and I think, when you say we were not completely finished, I would add that we change. We
Mm,
change our minds, um, for one, for instance, I was completely against any type of alternative medicine when I was young. And then I switched to when my kids were born. I was obsessed with homeopathy, and I only gave them homeopathy and essential oils, and I was the complete hippie type person. And I almost swore that I would never ever again go back to regular traditional Occidental medicine. And now here I am back again. I had cancer 2 years ago, and basically, yeah, I had surgery, and homeopathy could do nothing for me in that case. So
mm,
it's like, and I think that I like this idea of the core truth, but the core truth can also be kind of evolving. Um,
mm.
uh,
And that's the beauty of it. I mean, one of the things that I really wanted from it is I felt like there were so many templates out there and so many ways that if somebody followed something, it was sort of one and done, and there was
mm,
no kind of follow on from that, and so people were kind of left hanging after doing some work. And so with this, the interesting thing was is I'd run it as a group, as a beta course, and it was incredible because although there were multiple people in the course, it kind of evolved around each of them in very different ways. Even though I was presenting the same material, there were lots of ways to sort of customize it, and so it became almost like a bespoke thing but within a
mm,
group. And it was lots of the people following on from it were sort of saying, I'm still taking a lot of the principles and applying them, and I know that I'll continue to do that through life. And that was kind of what I wanted from it, is that it became
mm,
something bigger than just a course, bigger than just a training, bigger
mm,
than just any kind of mentorship. It became a new way of thinking and
mm.
evolving as a person.
A new normal.
Yeah, new normal, better one, hopefully.
What I think is really interesting is that the roles that we were talking about earlier on about women, those are not evolving. Those are strict, and I'm going to go for the word limiting, because this is what a good mother should be. And there's an agreement, an untold agreement, and this is not evolving. It supposedly cannot change.
Mm,
So why would if the framework of the core truths is here to help us get out of that, it needs to have this breathing room and evolution room, contrary to the actual social or family or transgenerational or even our own childhood shit that we have inherited, that put us in really I want to say train tracks. Kind of, we have to
yeah.
go this way.
Mm. Yeah, we feel like we're sort of put on a trajectory, and that's exactly where we need
Yeah.
to go.
Mm,
And there are no other courses, there are no other ways. And so,
mm,
getting out of those filters allows us the opportunity to sort of see other pathways and
mm,
see other opportunities, and um, believe that they're possible.
mm. Yeah.
And I think that that is so important right now. And the
Mm,
more of us that shed these excess filters that we carry and the things that drag us down, the better we are, to fight against those ideals that aren't correct anymore.
hmm. And I want to go back to what I said in the introduction, and that what you said as well, because I think it's kind of deep here, that this is not woo-woo mindset stuff. This is neuroscience, right?
Mm,
Our brain is recalibrating reality according to our beliefs. It's not like we're just sitting here, drinking yogi tea and having a conversation about mindset, and which, I do believe mindset is something, but it's not the whole of it, right?
Mm. I think it's, there's a lot of very superficial work out there. And I think one of the things that's really been my mainstay for the last 25 years is always wanting to dig deeper, always wanting to
Mm,
find more meaning and more sense of understanding something. And I think there's a lot of surface stuff out there, and I think people need more because they're only getting so far. And it leads to a lot of frustration when you go through something and you think, right, this is it, this is what I really need, and then it doesn't really deliver.
mm,
So I wanted something that kind of evolved with each person that was in some cases pretty hard hitting, really, because it is hard to look at
mm.
yourself and be quite critical in so many ways, but it's done with the best sense of understanding yourself better. And I think we all have that curiosity about who we are and what matters to us.
Yeah, and how we decide that we want to be and really make a conscious decision that is nothing to do with neural pathways or, social conditioning or family stories or childhood events. But today, age 58, for me, who do I want to be from this day on, basically?
Mm,
And that I
mm.
know that I can evolve, sure, but that the choices that I make are my choices and not some inherited or filtered things.
Yeah, not driven by somebody else or driven by experiences that created
Mm-hmm.
fear or anger or any other emotion. Really, it was just about sort of finding what's there underneath it all, and bringing that to the forefront, because that enables you to sort of be the best version of yourself at this point in time, and it allows you to evolve because that's what should happen.
Mm. It's really interesting the neuroscience of it, because the idea that from the little that I know, I'm not a specialist at all, that the neural pathways are transformed to go where it's kind of easier for the brain or the
Mm,
mind. So,
mm.
and that would be the familiar. What it makes me think of is I used to be a skier, the flat type, not the, I don't know how you call it. I'm sorry, English is not
Downhill.
my first language. Not downhill, the flat type where there are actually tracks
Yeah,
very
for
often.
cross country.
Yeah, cross country. So there are actually tracks that have been marked by the previous skiers. So tradition, yeah, in a way, in a metaphoric way. And to
Absolutely.
decide to take a left or a right and ski in the complete virgin snow is exhausting. It's really exhausting because you have to literally make the track. And when I think about neural pathways, I think about that, how
Mm.
to get out of the actual track and change something is very, very difficult. How do how do you convince people that it's worth it and that they can do it, basically?
Ooh, well, you should start with a very small exercise that
Mm,
it really has to do with, and going back to the example of my dad and learning to ride the bike, for me, I went back to that, revisited that moment, and I understood the emotion that I was feeling. And I think
mm,
if you can sort of name what's going on for you and identify where it is in your body, because so much of what we talk about when it's not, and I say traumatic, but traumatic can really cover small
mm,
things, micro
yeah.
traumas versus something much larger. Um, is that, we downplay those little things because we don't think it was anything big
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
major, but yet, sort of 50 years later, it's still sort of causing you problems. Of course, it's worth doing something about, and of course, it's worth there. So going back to that point and sort of understanding and my idea of what was going on at that point, and sort of recoding it, really, sort of feeling where I felt it in my body, what it meant to me emotionally, and then moving forward from there. It was about sort of saying, okay, if I had hypothetically friends or family who were there and observed the situation, what would they say about it? What would their
Mm,
observations be? Because they may have seen something that I didn't know about at the time. And could any of those alternatives be the truth? And
hmm.
have I actually been living through something that wasn't true all along? And
Hmm.
essentially, when you start opening your mind up to being, is there something else out there that it could be? Your brain suddenly kind of goes, oh yeah. And for years it was sort of the not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And yet if I say I'm not good enough, I kind of start to laugh or smile because I think that's not true anymore,
Mm,
and that's amazing. And that's really happened in a very short space of time. It
mhm.
unraveled 50 years of feeling that way to,
So it's
actually,
about
yeah.
finding ways to convince ourselves that we are wrong, basically.
Yeah, or that the thing we put a lot of weight and emphasis and meaning
Hmm.
into actually didn't mean that. And
Mm,
maybe
yeah.
there's something else there that we didn't know about at the time, and
Hmm.
that can change everything. And suddenly,
Hmm.
you feel, for me, I was becoming much braver about speaking in public, about talking about my work and pursuing areas that I thought were off limits to me because I just
Hmm.
didn't feel that wasn't for me. I'd already determined that.
And because you named you found the title of the episode and added the word women in there, I'm going to have to ask, what would it be different for men? Or, is this kind of way functioning pattern specific to women, or are we more prone to it? Or is it just that you know more women, you work with women more?
I guess because it's come from my experience, I have worked with both men and women through this. I think with women we have more filters, we have more layers, we have more fragments of ourselves that we give away over time,
Mm,
and it's different somehow. So I think the transformation can just be that much bigger, really,
mm,
because
hmm.
it more powerful. It means more. And I think going back to your comment about the social constructs, um, it means more because people don't let us go into that space. And so we
Mm.
have to take it for ourselves.
Yeah, maybe there's also, the general idea that we live in a world that has, for generations, women have their roles have been decided by other people, literally men, basically. The patriarchy and its weight upon the construction of women, we are more prone, I'm guessing, to just go with whatever we should do or should
Mm.
be. Whereas men are encouraged to go on adventures, create, kind of work and fight the dragons. And we are supposed to be staying at home knitting.
Mm. Yeah, and there's so much, I mean, it's sort of the good girl thing, you be a good
Hmm.
girl and just be quiet and sit over there, or just generally through life, people sort of thinking that there's, with women as leaders, if you start to sort of become more assertive, suddenly, you're termed in a totally different way to the way a man would be if they were
Hmm.
being assertive. And so there's certain qualities that have always felt kind of off limit. And I think we're all human and we're able to
Of
experience
course.
these things and be these things. If we are these things and we can own it, then what's possible from here?
I think that what I find really interesting is this quest for ungluing, I can't find a better word, our view of reality from actual reality. So our view of the truth from actual truth. And this separation, which I'm guessing might be painful, because, it's been that many years that I believed that I was not an artist and that I could not be an artist. And that was me. That was part of my social, my persona, myself, basically. And so the disassociation was, yeah, frightening, a little painful. Am I going to dare to be something else than what I thought I was for all those years? And I don't know if you feel that kind of fear of the safety of the comfort zone of being what I think I should be.
A little bit, yeah. And I mean, for me, I think it's kind of, there's a bit of regret in there because there's like, why didn't I get to this sooner? Because if I
Of course.
had, imagine what could have been in front of me. But, again, we're sort of catering towards filters about age, because then we're sort of saying, well, if I'd done it when I was younger, then yeah, imagine what was
Hmm.
possible.
Hmm.
Well, imagine what's possible now doing it at the age of 56, it's still
Yeah. Mhm.
possible.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
I have there's so many examples. Being over 50 myself, I've been really working on that, on finding examples of women, particularly, who kind of explode in their joy and happiness and well-being after 50. And really, I will not let anyone, well, tell me that it's too late. It's never freaking too late, as long as we're alive.
No,
But
it it's interesting, isn't it? You know, how it sort of happens at that stage. And, and there's so much talk about midlife crisis. And I don't really believe in it because I don't think it always happens at midlife. It's always when you get to that stage where you're starting to question, is this all there is? Is this
yeah,
the way life
yeah,
was meant to be? And that could really
yeah.
happen at 20, 30, any age, really.
Yeah, but I have to say there that the societal expectations again on mothers. I'm working on a thing about mothers these days. That's why I might be obsessed. But there is this idea that when you're fully immersed in motherhood, you literally, at least I didn't have any more time to think about anything else, and let alone
Mm,
myself. So I had to emerge on the other side of motherhood and have my kids now almost grown up and almost, doing having their own lives, to be able to to just be in a brain capacity and body capacity to care about anything else than
mm.
their survival, their well-being, blah blah blah, what I was supposed to be doing, plus the as we've seen before, the societal injunctions that this was how I was to be a good mother and not otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, so
And that's where the empty nest syndrome comes from, isn't it? Suddenly
yeah,
you find, all those things that that was your entire world
mm,
and incredibly important. I mean, there can't be anything more important than bringing up a little human in the world and making sure they turn out to be a good person.
yeah,
But, suddenly that role shifts and they don't need you anymore and they've gone off to
yeah,
university and
yeah,
they're working and
yeah. And the question that gets asked there is, what now? And the only thing that I could see in front of me was me. It's like, okay. And so once it's almost as if the societal expectations did not matter anymore, because now I'm for society, for a patriarchal society. I've done my job. It's like,
mm,
okay, good job. You did whatever. So now you can, go and become an artist, basically, or whatever you want to become. But I think that for some other expectations or neural pathways or social constructs, they can happen at any age, as you were saying. This particular one that I'm talking about, the motherhood thing, I think is a very heavy, engulfing thing. But there are other places where I'm guessing that we can disassociate from the fake truth. Does that make
yeah.
sense? Fake truth at any age, right?
Absolutely, but that's where the intentional neuroplasticity comes in. As we get older, we have less opportunity because our brains become on these tracks, as you say,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we are headed towards things that feel familiar to us all the time. And that's one of the reasons why we always say time passes so quickly when we get older, because we're so ingrained in patterns that we're following these patterns and we're
Hmm.
less mindful of what we're doing and we're less probably creative about different ways of doing things and less stepping out of our comfort zones. And
Hmm.
because we're not doing that, every day goes by in a blur because our brains are busy worrying away, predicting. And so there isn't any intentional thought to that. So when you
Hmm.
apply the intentional thought, change can occur. So I'm all about let's bring it on.
Hmm.
Let's do this intentional change. Let's take away all the things that take away from us and let's
Hmm.
add something amazing.
Yeah, but I love the idea that, at whatever age, we just have to embrace change. And that means that we kind of get out of the tracks. Um,
Mm.
as far as I'm concerned, I would say that I do that with my connection to the seasons. So every season, I'm very, very, I put a lot of intention on changing things.
Mm.
So now, yesterday I spent my whole day rearranging my office as a winter office because the house is different in the winter. There's less heated spaces. So my summer office is not available anymore, or unless I want to freeze in there. So these kind of things that for me, uh, it reminds me because the weather, time and weather are the same word in French. So because the weather changes, I think, oh, yeah, I connect to that. That means I have to change something too, and then get out of the repetitive pattern.
Mm. And it's
Uh,
good, that is good. But I think as humans, we kind of fall into, because life is so busy and because we're multitasking, we do end up in that track of let's just
mm,
go down the
mm,
path of least
yeah,
resistance. And
yeah,
before we know it, we're doing everything the way we do every day.
mm-hmm,
And time flies because no day is really remarkably different. So it's about
mm,
sort of creating that for yourself and creating a vision for yourself that you actually want to uphold, and getting rid of what's
mm,
in your way to get there.
mm, yeah, mm,
But it's interesting when you had the example about art, because that really resonated with me. I went through secondary school in Canada, and art was the art studio was where I hung out for the entire time I was in secondary school. And so I really wanted art as a career, and I wanted to go through and do something, and I chose graphic arts. And within the first year of doing the program, I said, I can't do this. I can't. It just, the criticism was unreal, because obviously graphic arts is so computerized now, but
mm,
back then it was sort of, you were creating, you were actually
yeah,
on
mm-hmm,
paper and you were making things.
mm-hmm,
And the criticism, which was such a big part of it, and I knew that was going to be that way, but in reality, it just fed into the whole, you're not good enough, you're not good enough.
yeah,
And so
mm-hmm,
it went back to that 6-year-old self who couldn't ride the bike. And then art became the thing that I just couldn't do. And I had a
mm-hmm,
friend who was also in art, but her style of art was so different to mine. But I always thought she was much better than I was.
yeah.
And so, there was all these sort of
Mm-hmm,
landslide of things telling me this isn't for me. And so I ended up leaving the course partway through, and just said, this just is not for me. I don't know what is, because I left at that point and was completely adrift. I had no
mm.
idea what I wanted to do.
It's
And I
really
didn't come back.
interesting how the comparison and the competition, the criticism that is in very many artistic careers or courses. I studied as an actress.
Did
Can you
you?
imagine the competition over there? I worked as a professional actress for 3 years, and one day I woke up and I said, I can't anymore. I can't just apply, 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 and get rejected, get rejected, get rejected. Because that's what happens when you're an actor and you're not Natalie Portman or, Brad Pitt. You get rejected. You go, do the audition, and they say, well, thank you, we'll let you know. And that means you can go to hell, we don't want you. And that repetitive rejection it was too much. So I just like you, I just
Mm,
left. And I think that there's a very different thing between I want to do art and I want to make a living out of it. It's like writers. I work with everyone that works with me. I help them and I invite them to write because I think writing is a very good idea for your brain. It takes the things out of your head and to write with a pen, literally, and a paper, not type.
mm,
And but that doesn't mean that everyone should be an author.
mm,
Everyone should be a writer, but not an author. It's a very
mm,
different thing. And yeah, it's being creative for me is kind of a birthright, but more than a birthright, it's ingrained. And anytime we are forbidden to do so by our own fear, sometimes, or competition, means we then kind of dim our self and then go into there's less possible things. What you
mm.
were saying, I think at some point around, we see less things as possible.
Yeah.
And that's the diminishing, the limiting possibilities, actually. Um, and we really believe that, don't we?
Yeah, and I think then we take the actions that reinforce that, and we kind of make it our truth when it really isn't, you know. And I always think of it from, well, from a business perspective. When you go networking, I mean, I never go with the idea of promoting my business. I love meeting other people and hearing their stories, but you just never know when you meet that person that suddenly everything can change around that, and the
Mm.
opportunities that come from it. I mean, you and I, for example, I mean, we met at Women Only Wellness, and here we are talking still. So
Mm.
you know, you just never know where opportunities are. But if you weren't going to those things, and you didn't feel good enough about going to those things, you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
go, and then you would never meet anybody, and everything would stay the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the idea that it's not just mindset. It's actually we do the actions that reinforce the mindset, the belief, and then the neural pathways kick in, and basically it's a
Mm.
very nice hell of a circle of a shit circle in which we are trapped. Um,
Yeah, and I think
uh,
that's where it was important for me with the core truths, is to kind of bring the body into it, because I'd worked so many
mm,
years in the body. You can cognitively discuss something and you can say, yeah, yeah, I can see
yeah,
how I'm
mm-hmm,
thinking this, and I understand it, and it makes sense to me. But the minute you're presented with something that affects your sense of safety in your body, and your body goes, you know, you then it goes to your brain, and then you're starting
mm,
to think about it in a different way. And I think, you know, we have to have ways that actually acknowledge the brain and the body, how
mm,
they work
mm,
together, and
mm.
allow these cells in our body to actually evolve. Because
Yeah, no, there are many things actually I've found in my life that we cannot think our way through them. We
mm,
have to body our way and to act our way out of it. You know, if we go back to the artist thing, my way of dealing with that is, which I found recently, is I put myself on a timer every time I want to go and create with paints, or a timer, not so that I then have other things to do. But because after 30, 35 minutes, what used to happen is I would have this little voice in my head that would go, this is not serious. You should be going to work. You know, there's some laundry to do, and maybe some, your business needs your attention. And I would literally not give myself the opportunity to just create for the sake of creating. And I put a timer not to allow myself to get out of the creative zone
mm,
before the timer goes on. And the first times it was really freaking difficult. I felt like I was failing my business, my chores as a to-do list woman, crazy in the house, the whole things. And it's really interesting. I could see how my brain was fighting with my body, and with a timer. So using the phone as a reminder of, I've given myself this hour or these 2 hours or whatever, and I'm not, letting myself off the hook of doing creativity or art or
mm.
whatever. Um,
Sometimes it's making the window a bit smaller, because it was interesting, a podcast I listened to, and it was so many years ago, but it really stuck with me. And it was a guy who was talking about sort of wanting to get fit, and how he really struggled to get himself to the gym, and he had
mm,
all these goals that he wanted, and he always managed to sort of procrastinate or talk himself out of it. And one of the things he said was, he just decided one day that each day he was going to get up and he was going to do one press up, and he would just have a mat on the floor beside the bed, and he would do that. And so
mm,
what he found is that he got up the first time, did the one press up, and then kind of the second day he got up to do it and thought, this is a bit ridiculous just doing one. I'm here already. I'm going to keep going. And so it carried on until it became part of his routine. And so um, not to sort of go forward into some of the other core truths, but that has a lot to do with sort of removing barriers and obstacles and making
mm,
things easy for yourself,
yeah,
because we can
mm,
talk ourselves out of things.
yeah, and actually doing the thing, acting the thing, so putting the body into it, I think if I hear you, is important, and I would really agree very much that, I've been to therapy, and it didn't give me permission to become an artist. So that was years ago, and I still went out of there thinking, oh no, I'm not an artist, until I decided that I could just do it.
And it's
Um,
a great point to be at, you know, when you sort of have that acceptance of I can do these things and I
mm,
am able to do them and I am good at them. And it's just, I think we have to get away from all these other filters that sort of these voices that say
mm,
things. And if we think about where that voice came from, chances are it was somebody in our life said it at some
mm,
point, or
mm,
society made us think that way. and
mm.
and actually those aren't the ways we want to go forward.
Yeah. And it's kind of, taking back our um identity and
Mm.
voice. Kind of, no, no, I don't agree. This is not my voice in my head talking, so I will not listen to that anymore.
Yeah, and going back to how fragmented we can be as women because we have so many roles and you're playing
Hmm.
all these different parts, and you sit down and realize, actually, I'm going out to this thing and I'm this person, but that couldn't be really further away from who I am. And so when you start sort of figuring out who the real you is, and you streamline everything and everything becomes an extension of that person, and you operate in the same way with everything, you kind of find that flow. You're not sort of constantly switching hats and saying, I need to be this for this person and I need to
Yeah.
in my business do this because that's what's expected. It's not expected, it's just who you are.
Yeah. I feel that indeed, over the years, having kind of worked my way through my own version of the core truth that reality is filtered, what I find is that it's so much easier, actually, to try not to be all these things for every other person and to just be me,
Hmm.
whether people like it or not, whether it's enough or not. Sometimes it's not enough, but I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really yeah, easier.
And I think everything
Thank
kind of
you.
falls into line when it becomes easier through relationships, through yourself, through everything, and that's what the main goal is: streamline
Yeah.
everything, make
Yeah,
it
and
easy.
when you're more connected to the one core truth of yourself, of who you are, everything becomes so much easier and so much more joyful, dare I say?
Meaningful,
Mm.
joyful, any of those things,
Yeah,
really. Whatever
yeah,
whatever you're
mm,
looking for,
mm,
it will be there when you find yourself.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We've been talking for 45 minutes already, so roughly. So thank you so much. So this was episode 1. So we talked about this reality is filtered, not revealed. So that's core truth number 1. And guess what? There's going to be a second and a fourth and a third and a fourth and a fifth episode through which we're going to discuss core truth number 2, 3, 4, and 5. So stay tuned. We don't have dates for that now. If you're listening to this episode in the future, those might have already been released. So go and listen to those. Let me remind you also that you will find links to Nicole website and Facebook and Instagram and whatever all around this video or audio, whether you're wherever you're listening to this, so you can get to her and learn more about the core truth system, because, well, you guessed it, there's a program that you can go through and find your own core truths reality in there on the other side of that. So thanks again very much for coming.
Thank you for
I
having me.
really liked our conversation. I can't wait for the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.